It is 6:05. I'm going to call the board meeting of the WSESD to order. 6:05. The meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and to participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of a public body has technical difficulties accessing the meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Before we begin, I will note that as hard as I try to not have any executive sessions at the end of the meeting, there's one that is warned. The board needs to add another one under 1 VSA 313A1B pending a probable civil litigation or prosecution. I'm sorry. I'm stating the incorrect one, so let me. My apologies, it's 1 VSA 313A1F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. That is one. And the second one that the board is adding is 1 VSA 313A1D grievances or other tax grievances, and 1 VSA 313A1 labor relations agreements with employees. That executive session may touch on both of those, so to be safe, I'm including them both. To top that off, I've been asked to include another one by the administration under 1 VSA 313A3. The appointment or employment of public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during open meeting. I expect those will all be at the end of the meeting, so we will try to get through everything else as efficiently as possible. Thank you for your patience. I got that underway. So now we will start out with student matters. 5 to 10 minutes. Are there any students here who would like to speak?
I'm Zaria. I'm here on behalf of Student Council, BUHS Student Council, sorry. I'm here to express concerns about the lack of transparency about the sexual abuse allegation investigation that has been occurring over the past year. We feel it is very important to communicate with the student body and faculty in order to build trust and ensure school safety. Without it, rumors and speculation can happen, which can lead to the spread of false information. We understand that there are legal obligations and restrictions with any kind of investigation. However, we believe that any communication that can happen should happen. Last week or two, we sent out a survey to BUHS students to see how the confusion and lack of communication about the investigation affected school safety. Many students expressed concerns about how they felt like they had received little to no information about the sexual abuse investigation. One student said they feel like they are lacking communication about awareness and how to prevent it. Other students would simply like to know the next steps that are being taken regarding the investigation and termination of Steve Perrin. One student mentioned how many of the messages we receive are vague, and another said messages should be specific as possible. Overall, I am here at this meeting tonight in hopes of showing you that transparency is very important for our community. We hope that the newly elected board members will take this into consideration going forward. That is all.
Thank you very much. We would be mentioning under unfinished business, but I'll just note now, we are working with our attorney to try and gather information that we can. We've already met with the attorney once, and we will. That's an ongoing process that trying to gather information that we can present to the public. So that we are actively working to get that accomplished. So, but I would encourage you, if you or any other students have questions about what they can do to stay safe, be safe, or to share information, they should, anyone in the administration that they feel is a safe person for them, I believe that that's something that the administration has been working on, or you can certainly, or anyone can contact Attorney Goddard's office still. So, Robin.
Thank you so much, Zaria. And would you mind emailing me your entire statement? Is that written down that you just said? My email's on the website, so if you could send that to me, I'd really appreciate it. And I think that it would be good for the board and administration to have some time really looking at all of the really important points that you raised. Thank you.
So, Zaria, can I ask, I know this was a survey that you sent out. Was it sent out under the auspices of the Student Council?
Yes.
It was. So a couple of questions. Did it go to the entire student body?
Yes.
It did. And what was your success rate in terms of how many people responded?
Personally, I'm not sure because I didn't look at the responses myself.
Yeah.
The president of student council did, but I could probably find that out.
You know, I'm asking not because I'm questioning your summary of results, but rather to have a sense to what extent when information is sent out to the entire student body, what is your rate of return? How many people actually pay attention and respond? And that will, I think, help put things in perspective as well. Not to minimize, but just to say, how are we reaching out? How are we communicating? So if you can get that information, that would be great. And then you could just funnel it to me. And I'll do something sensible with it. Okay? All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a hand up in
Any other students before I? Okay. Any students in the board? Okay. Mindy?
Hi, I wanted to first of all just commend the students for their self-advocacy. I'm just really impressed. This must be anxiety producing to have this investigation going on into misconduct that, you know, it must be hugely anxiety producing. And I'm really just impressed with the way the students are advocating for themselves and their right to information that affects them. But the other thing, maybe I would have asked this later, but since it came up now, I'm just wondering, you've referenced meeting with the attorney, but I'm curious about how that's happening if they're not in warned meetings. Can you explain the process of how you're meeting, how you're interacting with the attorneys to get this information if it's not in warned meetings?
We had, at our last meeting, we had an executive session that we met with our attorney. We will be meeting with our attorney again this evening, and I added that at the beginning of the meeting. I added that executive session to the beginning of the meeting.
And by your attorney, do you mean with Attorney Goddard, or is the information being filtered through a different attorney?
I'm not going to answer that. We're meeting with the board's attorney, and when we working on information that we can disclose to the public about the investigation. So.
But the attorney will be invited into the executive session publicly, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Anyone else for the student matters? I'll ask one more time, student matters. And we will move on then to the administrative report. And I'll hand it over to Mark.
Great, thank you. So tonight for our focus of the report, we're going to be highlighting the work of our diversity, equity teacher leaders and work that has continued in all of our schools. And we have Michaela Sims here as our DEI coordinator to lead that presentation. So I'll turn it over to Michaela.
Oh, okay. That was quick.
Yeah.
Paul, did you get the wings?
Did.
It's very sparse. You can tell when I made a PowerPoint and when someone else has made it. If I made it, it has like 2 slides. Not my own. Just give me a second. I'll put it on my computer so I don't have to keep looking back.
Looks like I don't have permission to play one media object.
I know. Let me text Shannon because I don't have the permission either. Shannon, if you're on there, could you give us permission to play the video? Yeah, she might hear.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you. There we go. Look at that. Technology is amazing. All right. Good evening, y'all. I'm so sorry I missed your presentations, Aria, but I'll watch the video. I'm Michaela Sims. I do equity and social justice work in Brattleboro and the surrounding towns, all the schools in WSESD, for those who don't know me. I've been doing it for 15 years, believe it or not. I never thought I'd say I had a job for 15 years, but this is my 15th year here. And I really love it. And this presentation is gonna be short and sweet, but I'm gonna kind of weave together our challenges and our triumphs together, because as we move forward, we're still taking some steps back. And just to acknowledge those. And so one of the things that we've been working on for many years is just really having the infrastructure to meet the challenges of equity in our schools. So that means like having the teacher leaders in every building. Actually, I'm the only one who's gonna speak tonight. The teacher leaders spoke at the last one. And having study groups and having other things that really kind of support the expectations that are coming onto people as we more integrate equity more and more. We're not quite there in terms of it's everyone's job, but because equity can't be one person's job, it has to be everyone's job. And I think that that's one of the challenges that we're facing, is that not everyone feels like they can handle that responsibility or that they're ready to. And so it's still seen in many people's minds as something you do on the side as an initiative, and it really very much is not an initiative. And so one of the other challenges with the great work of the teacher leaders who are doing amazing is that those are also people who are called on to do other things. And so we have the people who are upfront in the equity work also have a lot on their shoulders because they're active in a lot of other things. And so with that, as time goes on, since they're stepping up as responsables, so people are responsible in their schools and they have other things on their plate, sometimes what their expectations for the equity work kind of slides because it's just a lot happening in schools right now. And so that's another challenge. The other thing I'll say is that we're not a bubble. And so right now there's a lot going on in society, and it's very much reflected in what's happening in our schools. So we're like with our equity work, people are really engaged. But we're in some ways we're swimming upstream with the current climate that we have. And so the question for me is, how do we match the urgency of the situation with the intensity of our work? And we have to do more. We're doing a lot, but we have to do more because the urgency of the situation is very intense right now. I'm using the word intense a lot. But because we haven't gotten to the point where it's part of the fabric yet, we're kind of challenged. But that being said, these students, I think, are really emblematic of the work that's happened in the school district. These are students who, most of which, have been in the WARE 5 or 6 years. Kaya, 6 years. And I think that really, the relationship building that's necessary for equity to happen is happening. And that's not just relationships with students, it's also relationships among the staff, among the administration. Those relationships are imperative. Like, we can't have a strong student body if we don't have a strong faculty and staff. If we're not connected, the students see that. And then they gotta weigh, like play the parents against each other. They gotta weigh in. So really that's an important focus now, is to really strengthen the ties between our faculty and our staff. And that's a lot of the work that teacher leaders are doing, is making the connection between the equity work and the community building together. And this is the fun part. So this is the Educators of Color retreat. treat. And I started the Vermont Educators of Color Association a few years ago. Oh, it's not changing. I'm clicking on mine. See, I'm short-sighted. There we go.
There we go.
And so it started off as a dinner here that I would hold for our staff. And usually every year I do hold a dinner for our staff, but this is a statewide organization that we get together twice a year, and any educator is welcome. It's in terms of building infrastructure for our state in order to have racially diverse, I shouldn't even use that word, people from a variety of phenotypes and lived experience to stay in our districts, to stay in the state of Vermont. And so this actually retreat is happening again next week. I think there are 1 or 2 WSESU teachers coming to it. So these are the teachers, and then we bring our kids. And so that's another thing, is that we have childcare and we have our kids together. And so it's like, this is the kind of thing that really promotes building the community that I talked about. One of the challenges is that the tiredness. And so people are like, I'm so tired. I don't know that I can do that. Oh, can I make it? And so we try to make it so on weekdays, and people are like, feel bad. Like, I don't know if I can ask for a sub. So just thinking about ways that we can build the infrastructure. So, because we used to do Friday, Saturday, and this time we're trying Saturday, Sunday, because so many people don't want to take off from work and they're scared. But this is one of the ways that we're building infrastructure for equity. The other thing is the teacher leader retreat. So the teacher leaders themselves, they have a lot on their shoulders. One of which is holding staff meetings. They should have, most of them have monthly staff meetings. And so they don't get a lot of time together. So we have a teacher leader fall and spring retreat. This is this fall. Every year we had it at the retreat farm. And then we'll have it in 2 weeks at the retreat farm again. And the administrators are invited to the second day of May 18th to come and see what we've been doing. So this is a really important part of the program. Let me keep up. So the other thing is that when I talk about it becoming everyone's job, the question is like, how do we get to that place? How do we get to the place where everyone's like, oh, this is my job? I have to say, if you look at the links later, not on this slide, but the next slide, the programming slide, one of the links is to the very intricate Celebrate Diversity schedule we had. So you should click on it and look at it. And this is the first year ever that every student that was in school that day was in the workshop all day. And so that takes a village to do that. And people were very flexible. The administration of the high school was very encouraging to do that. I was like, I don't know, people are gonna get mad. They were like, let's go ahead, let's do it. So, and you can juxtapose those 2 schedules, the one from fall, which is the one I've been using for over 10 years, and then the one we did this spring, which is the first. And not to say that's without challenges, but it's an important step forward in making it the fabric. And I feel like the next step in that is talking to teachers and saying, look, how can we help you integrate this work into your classroom so that there is also an academic expectation for the day, that there's a project or something that's linked to the day that's kind of bookended so the students feel a level of responsibility to attend. And that's part of the infrastructure. There has been an increase in communication and planning between school administrators and teacher leaders. That's something that's happened over the years. And working with Shannon and myself around planning and around issues that have come up. So that has definitely increased. There's an increased administrative focus on equity at admin leadership meetings. And I feel like it's more than ever on people's tongues. And there's increased teachers' interest at the building level and questions and engagement with the teacher leaders. That being said, it's a lot on their shoulder. And, as I missed the thing, a lot of more student leadership in regard to equity across the schools, students asking, and including affinity groups at the elementary schools, which are new and they're more being organized now. Should I stop? Any questions? I'm just rambling. Can you go to slide 7 and I'll show some pictures, and then I'll go back to the program. Oh, you clicked on it. So we took a big group of students. They were there to the Black Experience to see Angela Davis, and this is Trisha Rose in Burlington. And this was a trip open to anyone in the school, but it was mostly aware students. That we went up to do that in February. Most of the sixth graders in the district, quite a few classes that took Spanish, some from Oak Grove, some from Academy, went down to Holyoke to a place called Resurfacing, which is a farm in Holyoke. And we met up with seventh graders from Holyoke, and they gave us a walking tour. And when they gave us a walking tour, and that's the teacher from the other school, and these are some of the students from the other school, was the artwork. And this is art on the side of an industrial building. It's actually, you can't see the top of the moose. It's a moose and a calf made out of scrap metal. And the kids were amazing. And so there's one more class that's gonna go to Holyoke hopefully in a couple of weeks and work on the farm. This is a Celebrate Diversity this fall. This is Rodney Edgens, and this is Sharon doing yoga at our last fall. And this just happened last Friday. Want to press play? Let's see. This is the group that we had, A2BT.
Right, play.
Let's see if it plays. It's only 18 seconds. Can you hear it? So this is the high school students. Or this is the middle school.
High school.
It's high school. Is it the high school? Oh yeah, that's high school. So we have a group, and actually both the middle school and the high school students, were out on the field dancing. I was like, are the middle school students gonna dance? They did. There's a couple more slides with pictures.
Come on.
In the fall, the 7th and 8th graders went to Susu. The 8th graders. We planned this for the previous fall. Previous spring we couldn't make it work. So this fall we took all the 8th graders to Susu Farm for 2 teams. I guess 2 teams of 8th graders went to Susu Farm, and they did this. They did like an herb walk. This is the kids. That's the only thing I have pictures of. This is the kids playing in the leaves. But they did art, and they sat by a fire and told stories.
So when you say 8th grade, do you mean every 8th grade?
It ended up being just BAMS. Oh wait, no, it was BAMS and Putney Central.
Okay, those 2 schools. Okay.
Yeah, from Dummerston couldn't make it for some reason.
Okay.
It was BAMS and Putney Central. Yeah, I try to do things that encompass all the schools when possible. Yeah.
Could you, okay,
Yes.
could you say a little more about Susu Farms, because they do a whole lot more than just grow things.
Yeah, they have a lot of programs.
Yeah, did they
Yeah.
talk about those programs?
They did invite the students to come back for different programming. They're gonna have something in August, which I don't know if I can attend for BIPOC youth leaders, but they do have a lot of other programming for families, and it's a BIPOC Black Indigenous farm in Newfane, Vermont. This fall, we're gonna do like an herb class for students who are interested in herbs, which I haven't talked to Keith or but
We're doing it.
where the kids will go to the farm and learn about herbs and learning how to make medicine this fall.
One interesting thing about Susu is all the kids there are homeschooled. They don't want to put their kids into the public schools for various reasons.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. For sure. This is a trip for, what was it called? Asuba to Albany State. Yeah.
It was Black Solidarity Day.
Black Solidarity Day.
Wait, I'm wearing my shirt. Yeah.
Oh, you are wearing your shirt.
That's why I said Asuba.
Yeah. Okay. And so there was a lot of workshops. Some of the workshop inspired y'all to do your hip hop, your music workshop. You want to say something about that?
About like our workshop?
No, just how that trip inspired you to do the music one.
So when we went to Albany State University, we got a presentation from some of the students where they talked about sort of like the origins of music, and we thought that was really, really cool, and they played some music for us too, and sort of like taught us about different styles that aren't as well known, and sort of the roots in it, and how a lot of it came from like Black people and African people, and so that's what inspired us this Diversity Day like last week. to do our presentation about stuff like that, about the roots of music. So.
There you go. Thanks. And then if you could go to slide 6. So that's just an example of some of the programming that happens. In addition, every year so far, for the last, I think, 3 years, I don't know what grade, I think maybe the 5th grade at Academy goes to the Turner Family Historical Sites in Grafton. That's another thing we support. The 7th, well, I don't think it's 7th and 8th graders that take Chinese in the middle school have gone on trips to Chinatown. And then students attend conferences. Rolling Conference, Vermont Grassroots Conference, Social Justice Conference, which is the first of its kind, which was April 1st. And then we went to one in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Collaborative Social Justice Conference. So there are the schedules to look at. We're working towards just better attendance because we can't do this without study. And I think that one of the challenges is that you get a lot more robust results when people are opting in to do things. The challenge when you opt in to do things is that you get the usual suspects. And then when you make things mandatory, then it's hard because not everyone is like putting really the axe to the grindstone because so much of this work is unlearning things. And if you're not in that space that you want to make those kind of changes for yourself, it's not really going to happen, right? You can just sit in any room and like sit in a circle, scream out loud. It doesn't matter. Like it's from the inside, and that can't be mandated. And so I think that's one of the challenges going forward. It's harder right now to get people in study groups. I think that part of the challenges is we're leaning on things being online, and people are kind of tired of that. And we've gotten, for a lot of the study groups, especially the one on deconstructing whiteness, we've gotten better attendance in person than we have online, and I haven't gone back to in person with that. But overall, there's better attendance for equity-based programming. So, like last Friday at Gallery Walk, there was a lot of families there, there were a lot of people there. Quite a few teacher leaders came by, and students, we don't have a video of this, students read their poems, we had a little mic and stuff, it was really sweet. And then we have this, I didn't bring that, I brought it up here, so I'm going to show it. And so the band students made this, they made like these quilt squares in the honor of, is it Gee's Band or G's Band? I always say G's Band in Alabama. And so they made, because our theme was Your Story Matters. And so they made these quilt squares, all the students made them. So it's really good work. I think that we have a lot of people really enthusiastic about it. I think there's a lot of change and a lot of moving forward. Just more, better.
Thank you, Michaela.
So can I just comment on something? Thank you for all of your hard work and your perseverance. You began by saying that you've been working in the district for 15 years, and your astonishment at that. And so it makes me think of my experience. And when I started at Horace Mann, I was coming in a school system that is as big as this one in totality, and multiple layers of. So I was the only person of color as a teacher administrator from anywhere. I was not the first person ever, but when I left in 2018, I was by far the longest retained teacher of color with 28 years. That is exhausting. That is painful. That is, you walk through life when you wear your identifier, when it's whatever your identifier is, whatever the issues are of privilege or marginalization, whatever they are, and we exist in different places in different ways. But the what's called macroaggressions, microaggressions, when they hit you, they don't go away. You don't rinse them out of your system at the end of the evening. They stay with you always. And so I want to acknowledge your 15 years of service in this district, and I want to acknowledge your determination to stay put in this district and your commitment to Educators of Color Retreat, to teacher leader retreats. Those are the ways that we sustain ourselves. I was lucky enough to work in a very high-end, New York City world. New York City is so diverse. But I would go to live-away conferences, and I would meet educators who were perhaps the only person of color within like a 500-mile radius in Utah or something like that. So it becomes more difficult to have those moments of rejuvenation in a world like this one. So I just really want to acknowledge that. And I just also want to say, as one member of this board, but hopefully I speak for the board when I say, when you need help or support, maybe that's a better word, I hope that you look to the board. You're going to look to your peers as well. I'm not negating that, but I'm just saying, I just want to increase the circle and really say that publicly at this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. And I think for me, I lost a friend, which some of you already know, but it just drives home like how the impact of stress on your physical self, like it's really sudden. And so then I'm always wondering like how much is too much? And people also like always putting yourself out there and people thinking that it's easy for you. And it's not. And like, I actually told someone the other day that I'm invisible to them, which is not an easy thing to say. And they didn't understand what I was saying, I don't think, or the gravity of that. And I feel like that's what you're reflecting back to me, is that there's a piece of that is not understood, that can't be understood unless people are really leaning in. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Michaela, for sticking with it for so long. I also wanted to point out and thank the board for continuing to provide resources. When this board was first formed in the first budget, at the annual meeting, the community voted to add $100,000 to the diversity, equity, and inclusion budget. And that's provided Michaela with the resources to take advantage of her skills and her experience and her ability to organize systems and establish communications and create this kind of structures and the connections that she has. Yeah, and so I just want to thank the board for the foresight and for basically giving her the resources to do a really great job. The teacher leader model I don't think is repeated anywhere in the state that I'm aware of.
I just wanted to really add my voice to those appreciating all the amazing stuff that Michaela has been able to do in this district, and also I just want to mention kind of what you were getting at, Deborah, about the importance of not just, I know that it's been a topic, we've talked about trying to increase the diversity on our staff and administration, but also thinking about what are we doing to retain those people and make them feel supported. And I know that that is also a really big part of Michaela's job, so it's good to hear that folks are taking advantage of the support that she's offering.
Yeah, and one other drum I'm always beating is that we don't just need people of color and people from different lived experiences, that we need regular old white folks that are really interested and really dedicated to equity and social justice. That's what we need. So it has to be at the top of the list.
And that means, I'm sorry, I feel so passionately about this. That means that people need to do their homework. That means that they do not come to the person of color to ask. There are resources out there. Ask your friends, ask your peers. There's a ton of literature out there written by anti-racist white folks. Do your homework, then step out and have a conversation. But the conversations where you always come to that same person are also exhausting and harmful to that person, the recipient. So I just want to say that.
Lana?
Yeah, to add my voice to this, thank you so much, Michaela, for both your 15 years of being in this community and doing the work that you do, and also to echo what Deborah's been saying. I really feel so much that isolation and exhaustion that comes with doing this work. And I want to implore our community members to understand that diversity comes in all different shapes, and that we all have to find a way to see our liberation tied up in this work. You know, one of the things that I was thinking as you were speaking is this, just being believed, that, you know, when we share our experiences, that we're heard and we're believed, and that the people within our community realize that it's not just for our sake that they're doing this work, but for their own sake. Lila Watson has a famous quote that I really love, and it reads as, "If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together." And I think at this point, we have to all decide that we're invested in this work, and it is for our own liberation, that we have to, you know, join these study groups, be a part of this, encourage our students to go on these trips, because it cannot just be the students of color who are showing up again and again and again. Thank you so much.
Eva?
I think we might have lost her.
Okay. Jamie?
We have a telephone.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's Jamie.
This is Jamie Colmswa Putney. I'm sorry, I'm traveling, so I can only call in. But I just wanted to honor Michaela Sims. And as a white woman, I have been just really honored to witness and receive the powerful work that she has spearheaded, and that she has empowered me as a white woman to pay attention and to notice ways that I can be present and show up. And I honor you, Michaela, as a mama, and I honor you as an exceptional educator. And I thank you for your labor. And I also want to say that as one of the white people that is working really hard to unlearn and be really receptive and do anti-racist practice, I was really grateful that the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union Social Justice Committee, or I'm forgetting the name of your office, I'm sorry, Michaela. The Office of Social Justice and Equity is sponsoring a book group that April Brown and myself are leading. And all the parents in the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union are invited, and we're reading Parenting for Social Justice right now. That a Putney parent had written, Angela Burkfield. And so we're doing that work this spring and in the fall again. And it's going to be via Zoom, and there'll be some in-person meetings over the summer. But I just want to invite folks. It's a multiracial group, but I really want to encourage folks who are in white bodies who want to come and be in a community of practice and work with each other, and just appreciate creating space for those of us who want to do this work. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And Eva, we see that you are back with us.
Oh, hi. I just want to thank Michaela for her 15 years. I go way back, meeting Michaela at the co-op, Brattleboro co-op, and I've just known her to be a person who speaks up and is very courageous. One of the things that's really coming up for me right now is regards to the microaggressions. It's one thing to hire and be diverse, but when you hire diverse people to be a part of the teacher body or the administrators, a lot of times the microaggressions is what chases those people away. So really, even if you aren't a person of color, doing that work of learning and how you bring people in as a community, as part of a team, is just as important as hiring that diverse person. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Anyone else? Are you, anything else for the admin?
Nope, that was the plan for tonight. That was focus.
Kelly?
Yes.
Is this the moment that there's the admin report, that's the school reports, the spreadsheet that's shared to board members? Is this the moment to ask questions about
Sure.
that?
Yep.
So I guess I wanted to ask the board. I'm kind of grappling with how do we as the board receive that information, review it, and process it, because I saw some themes that have come up over the last few months, and also some specific requests that were to the board embedded in that spreadsheet, and I don't want it to just roll by every month, particularly since the leadership councils have actually started to populate their sections and they have questions. And one of the recurring ones is, how do we get answers to our questions?
Right.
And so I feel like I don't know if it makes sense to carve out time each month on the agenda to have it as a separate sub item. And I think that I myself reviewed and pulled out things that I thought were themes and particular questions. There might be other, I don't know that we should list them all here, but I do think some of them require us as a board to consider and think about how we are engaging with the public and the community, and also how are we responding to administrators who are asking for our support. So that's kind of my call out and my open question around how do we handle how we're handling that.
Well, I think, I'm not, it may have been you who had requested that we have the committee on the
Right.
agenda each meeting for committee updates and leadership council updates. And so I guess that I was thinking, and if other people have a different thought or idea or suggestion, then of course everything can change. But I was thinking that that's where that those questions would come to the board there. And I would say, I think there was one question that I remember seeing about asking about how they would, to do with policy. Getting information about policies that would affect them. And I would suggest that maybe if there are specific ones that are targeted towards a particular committee, maybe they could, maybe reaching out to that committee on that particular question, or maybe someone on the committee reaching out to them on the question. So I guess maybe we'll need to work through that and how to sort of try to target it really so that they're the least number of pathways for them to get their questions or concerns resolved.
Yeah, the way the chair of the BUHS Leadership Council put it was, you have board members on different committees. I'm on policy, so BUHS Leadership Council, so I pass on information about policies. Whereas in Guilford, Sean is on the finance committee, he passes on information about finance. So different leadership councils are getting different information, and the request is, how can we get a broader summary of what the board is doing that might impact our school? I don't know the answer, except as a board member on the LC, I try my best not just to focus on policy, but to present salient points of view and issues from the board, not just from the committees I'm on.
Robin?
This is, I hope that I'm still on the topic, but one thing that I have been kind of wanting there to be for a long time, and that I think might help folks convey information to the leadership councils in a way that's like summarized enough to be useful, is that I would love, and I'm going to start doing this. now realize that like it's actually my job as the clerk. But I think it would be great if whenever we have minutes of a meeting, whether it's our whole board meetings or the committee meetings, that in addition to the minutes, there's like a one paragraph or like one sentence even summary of like, at this meeting, we considered these following issues, and then we voted to do blah, blah, blah. And that way, at least that, if those little mini summaries could be conveyed to all the leadership councils. And then if they were like, let's hear more about that thing, then they can ask their representative who's at the meeting to explain the stuff.
That's a great idea. It's another layer of work, considering the work has already been done in terms of the minutes. And the minutes are thorough. They're multiple pages, they're very readable, and they summarize the entire scope of, let's say, a 3-hour meeting. So do we really need to now put a summary on top of that when it's already contained on paper, when it's already on the website? So why not access what we are already doing for every leadership council to do that? Because if we do a summary, such as what you suggested, you also said if someone has a question about the summary, then they can ask the board representative for more information.
It seems,
but it's right there.
Just from my experience being on a leadership council and not on the board, a lot of people that are on these are not following every board meeting or reading the minutes of every committee. And so I'm just trying to think creatively about ways that we can get information to the people that feels digestible and like understandable for folks who aren't already like school board nerds like we are. And that I just thought having like, especially because like we have, for instance, our social media presence, which is beautifully conveyed by Ruby, and that
Jody, we can hear you.
There we go.
That where right now what's posted is like there is a meeting on this day, and it could be like there's a meeting on this day and we're going to hear from our diversity teacher leaders. And that we could also do something like that with our minutes, where we're like, here's a link to the minutes. They include info about blah, blah, and blah. And then that will make people be like, I think I will click on that and read more. Or they'll be like, not interested, scroll down. But I just feel like that even though all the information is out there, it's not that accessible for people who are like in the midst of their busy parenting lives.
I think just to echo that, because I also have been kind of throwing out as a community member a desire for some kind of I think of it as an executive summary from the board to the community via the leadership councils. And my experience in leadership councils has been that the board member in the agenda, there's a moment for the board report. And so each board member is like orally giving a report. And so that is the summary. And so if we have a snapshot or a brief statement that can be sent out to all the leadership councils via the board representatives, there's just consistency. And I don't disagree with the idea that it's all out there. All of the voluminous minutes are there and you can mine them. But I do think that if we're talking about accessibility and community engagement, it isn't a layer, it's a small layer and step that I think would make a big difference to that engagement. So I think it's something to consider, and I do think the Communications Council is going to be meeting and reconvening. It could be something that we talk about there to bring a proposal to the board, that seems appropriate in terms of how could we as a board communicate and engage more fully. So that might be a proposal to come out of that observation.
Looked like Ricky wanted to speak, but I think Mark.
I've also had my hand up online, just so folks know.
Okay.
Hi, Ricky Davidson, Brattleboro. I'm one of the tri-chairs of the BUHS Leadership Council. And one of the things that I think would help us, because I think that the way that we're now populating that report that you all get is a good thing for you all to have communication from us. But one of the things that I think as a leadership council would help us is for you all, if there's a topic that you know is coming up that you want public opinion on, we need to know that, because we could be kind of the help with that, getting public opinion to you all. Not that if some people reach right out to you directly, but not everybody does. So maybe, and that's one of the things that we often talk about at the High School Leadership Council is around, is there a way that we could be part of that communication to you if there's a topic that's coming up that you want public input on? Or is there a way that we can conduct sort of like this is what our community is thinking and feeling related to an issue that maybe affects the entire district? So also, I think a way for us to get what do you need from us back to us would also be helpful. Thank you.
Lana?
Hi, yeah. I was off the subject just before I start. I think there should be a way for us to tighten up when board members are online, just if we raise our hands for folks to make sure they're looking out for us. Because I don't want to interrupt anyone, but I did have my hand up. And along the lines of what Ricky was just saying, I think it would be really great if we had a directive for the school board representative, so that when we came to our leadership council meetings, we had the things that we needed to inform them. So I think what's been doing up to this point is just, I have personally been winging it. Here are the things that I think are most important, but that's subjective. So if we had the guidelines of what votes were taken, as Ricky said, what do you want the public's help with? What do you want folks to know? And if the school board representative was the one in charge of doing that, just bringing that important information to the leadership council meetings. Parents have a lot on their hands, and though I think that the notes are fantastic, our minutes are great, as a parent, I don't know that I would not read those if I was not on the school board. The last thing I wanted to say is just remind everyone that, this is a merged board. This is all brand new. So these things have not been in place, and it's incumbent upon us to put them in place, but just to be kind on ourselves, if it hasn't been done up to this point, there's a reason.
Thank you, Lana. Kim?
Just kind of reiterating what Ricky said, I know when we met at the BAM's leadership last week, they just really felt that they would like to not be consulted, but asked about things that are pertinent to them before it's voted on by the board, and along those lines, just because they want to feel included as well, and that their viewpoint matters. If we're having them meet for these leadership councils, they would just, some things that are pertinent to them, or next year when their students are moving to the high school, that not consulted, but we go to them and ask their opinion at the same time.
So, amongst the issues that I'm hearing a need for consistency as you go from leadership council to leadership council. So I want to reiterate what Lana said, because at Demerston, I think the summary statement would be great, because then I'll shut up at Demerston and the meeting will end sooner. Because what I talk about is policy. Because for some reason, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I actually enjoy what I'm doing. And I do think that policy is the underpinnings of everything that we do here. So I feel justified in what I'm doing. And I extrapolate from the notes, again, subjectively, what I feel are, but if you want to go with consistency and you want to go with a statement coming out of the board that goes to every leadership council, then the board rep is sitting there, interesting, I'm not quite sure why. And then leadership councils now have a way of communicating desires back to the board. And we'll certainly look at that at the retreat. We talked about that to see whether putting it at the end of the monthly statements makes sense, or we need to see it in a different way. the leadership councils all meet at different times during the month. And that is also going to create a ripple effect in terms of when something is coming up at a board meeting versus when, a particular leadership council is meeting. Are we really going to hit them at the right time?
And they meet just once a month.
Oh, I'm sorry, and they meet just once a month, leadership councils. So I think I'm all for trying it. I think it's a good idea. It'll be interesting to see what our role is as a board representative sitting in that space, in that moment, right? Because we may not be necessary anymore. So I just thought, that is just a hypothetical, not meant to put, panic in people that there might be a change. But we're talking about change right now. So anyway.
Robin.
I just want to briefly say that I do think even when we're getting these little snippets on the bottom of the administrator's report about their school, that having board members there to witness the conversation that goes on at these meetings is extremely important.
Of course.
Even if we don't say anything, just having a conduit of someone who's on the board that can actually understand and hear about what people feel is going on in their school is really vital, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm speaking about Guilford Leadership Council now. They have a very structured agenda. So I get 5 minutes right in the beginning, and then there's an administrative report for the principal, and then they do a lot of work about what actually is going to happen, what kind of programs are going to be happening in the school. So I think it's a good balanced mix. And I try to look at what has been done at the board level over the previous meetings and then present that to the board, to the leadership council. So I think it's pretty successful from my viewpoint. Maybe other people don't feel that way.
David.
Yeah, there's Lana mentioned that this is all new. This structure is all, this governance system is all new, and it's much more complex and demanding than any previous system. And I think that there have been a number of really solid suggestions or recommendations of things that should happen, mostly, almost completely around communications, which requires somebody to take the time to put the communications together. And I think that this may fit into what you mentioned about the retreat, but I think the board might want to consider hiring some part-time clerical support. It's a much larger, as I said, more complex and more demanding board. It's very different. It's a huge institution, and it's more than you can ask these 10 people to do. Just never mind your executive sessions. Just the work that's being done between meetings is more than anybody has ever done in the school board before. So I think it just may be something you need to add to the system.
David, that suggestion. Ruby, did you want to speak?
Yes, and I guess it's because I know we're coming to a close on this, and there are 3 points that haven't been mentioned, and I want to make sure are kind of captured in our meeting. What I saw was a request from the BUHS Leadership Council to be included in the mascot decision. And so just, that's a specific question to the board, whether or not it should be the board. And Mark, I think that deserves some response or engagement. And then also, I think it was the Guilford Leadership Council, or no, I think it was John Gagnon, not in the Leadership Council section. It was a request to that we plan for the future, including social workers and coaching in the budget in a non-ESSER world. I realize that's something that has been discussed and that the finance committee will discuss, but since it was in a report to the board, just calling that out. And then in the superintendent's section, Mark calls out a concern about certified teachers wishing to move to special ed, not having the support that paraeducators with a bachelor's would have, and asks for any advocacy that we can do. So I think it could be worth the board discussing drafting a letter, I don't know to whom, to the legislature, to the AOE. I don't know what that advocacy looks like, but that was a specific, very concrete request. And so it's those types of things that I don't think we're going to unpack. How do we engage with this report to us right this very second? But those are examples of things that if we don't call them out and respond to them in terms of action steps, they'll go by the wayside each month. And that's something that would be a shame. So if we can put our thinking hats on about how to engage with those requests, I think that would be a good thing.
I do believe that Mark will be providing with us with some information on moving forward with the school branding.
Yeah. And since you mentioned BUHS, there's one more request that high school dropout rates be included in the CIP. Paul was part of that discussion.
Anything else under the administrative report? Okay, then we will move on to the clerk's report. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 25, 2023?
So moved. And I also have an amendment I just got the wording a little bit wrong on page 5. So I want to correct that to read, move to direct the administration to change the current Colonel's mascot and brand to a new one that is without harmful and racist implications.
So are you making a motion to amend the minutes?
Yes.
As indicated?
Sorry, yes, I move that we amend the minutes to reflect the language that I just said.
Can you, I just got to that page. Can you just say it one more time, please?
Okay, so what Tim actually said was to direct the administration to change the current Colonel's mascot and brand to a new one that is without harmful and racist implications. I think I lost a few words in the way that I wrote it down there, so I'm just correcting that.
Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, so all those in favor of making the amendment to the minutes as Robin has read out, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so the minutes being proposed are amended. Is there any discussion on the minutes themselves? Okay, all those in favor of the minutes with the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention? Okay, so the minutes are. Is there a motion to approve the warrants of April 10, 2023 in the amount of $1,092,497.88? April 17, 2023 in the amount of $130,692.14. May 1, 2023 in the amount of $358,563.67. The payrolls of April 7, 2023 in the amount of $1,425,219.57. And April 21, 2023 in the amount of $1,447,847.51.
So moved.
Okay, so I'm going to give it to Kim. Thank you, Sean, for that.
Is this where I repeat the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kim Price to approve the warrants as listed.
And the payrolls.
And the payrolls, thank you.
Is there any discussion?
Just a point. The warrants often show us where professional development trips have been. And I think it's great that people go to professional development conferences. Getting back to the board reports, the school reports, I think it would be helpful under professional development for us to know who's gone to which professional development conferences. For example, I believe Bren went to Colorado for conference. That would be good in the board report, though it wasn't listed under professional development. That would give us an idea, which I think we entirely support, to fund conference attendance.
Just a question, is it a matter of where or a matter of what conference?
I'd say what conference, so the name of the conference, so we know what's happening.
The duration, right?
That information is available to some extent in the warrants. As an example, that warrant that we just approved had $3,000 in airfares. So if you do go through the warrants, you can definitely see where there have been expenditures for conferences and stuff.
But in support of what Tim just said, it's a little different. And maybe it's on the same notion as the conversation we just had about leadership councils and minutes and whatnot. But I think it would be helpful to not have to search through the warrants, but rather, and it's really an issue of professional development. What's the topic? And it gives a sense of how the district is reaching out beyond its own boundaries. So I'm thrilled that someone is going out of state to a conference. That means you're really hearing maybe other perspectives, other voices, you're networking in a way. And to hear that Michaela has either instituted or gone to these conferences, it just sends a message about the commitment on the part of the district for outreach and PD.
Just a question about that. Do we spend a couple hundred, 200,000 a year in PD or around that? How much are we spending or budgeting? It's a lot of money, right?
Yeah, and then so you have your tuition reimbursement component of the collective bargaining agreement, and then you have a lot in our title programs, specifically professional development. And then there's general improvement.
My point is, especially in a larger school, we sign off on a lot of professional development frequently, and people are doing it for licensure and different things. I think I would like to be able to talk about it as an administrative team around how we're going to manage that, because at a larger school, I mean, at the middle high school, we could be signing off on hundreds of those throughout the year.
There's a lot.
So I don't know if you want us to highlight ones that people are taking $50 courses all the time online, and so I don't know. I think it's.
No, that's a great point, Keith. I would modify that to request that people in leadership positions, coordinatorship positions, just limit it to that. We can't follow every staff development workshop.
You're right. Okay.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before? No, we were, is there?
We need to vote.
We need to.
Yeah, we went off topic.
Yeah.
On the warrants, yeah.
Yes, on the
warrants.
I had to catch myself. Okay, so now that we've had the discussion, all those in favor of the warrants and payrolls as read?
Yes.
Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Now we go on to.
Can I have just a point of order? Because I think that we had minutes to an executive session on the 25th that although we had no action at the top of them, it does say these are preliminary until approved at a future board meeting. So are we not going to be approving them, or did we just approve? I thought we just approved just the longer.
We don't publish minutes of the executive sessions.
No, this is in the we opened a public meeting, we closed, we went into executive session and then came out and had no action. So, but there's still technically minutes on our website.
It's not on the agenda, so we can't vote on it.
Okay, so I
we'll
will
put it on the
ask
next one.
Mo to put the minutes on the, that's a very good point, the minutes on the agenda specifically for the executive session.
On the 25th.
We don't usually run across this issue. I should have said each of them, but I will make a note too for the executive session. Only next time. Thank you for catching that, Ruby.
So can I just, this is a clarifying question on this point. When I look at these minutes, there's mention of the executive sessions in here.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about a need to have.
There was the one that we had before the meeting, and then we adjourned, and then we reopened a second meeting on the same day. That's what she's talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
So now we are moving on to the fiscal report, and I will see if Frank has anything for us.
Yes, so we had a finance committee meeting earlier today at 5, and we reviewed the capital plan. It is, I think they intent of the finance committee to make a motion to approve the capital plan. I did distribute the hard copy that was sent out on Thursday to the board. It is on the website if any folks want to join in the review. We reviewed the 42 projects in the plan by school site. We reviewed the guiding principles of the how we are inform the plan, which is starts with the board policy E14, considers energy specialists, sustainable building practices, the funding community that we work with very closely to move toward these projects. So that was all part of our discussion at 5. I'm glad to go into any kind of specifics if folks want to. It is basically the updated plan that the board reviewed on January 10, 2023, before we did the budget vote for fiscal year 24. So, Sean, maybe I'll turn it over to you.
Madam Chair, if I may. That would be good later. I would like to make a motion that the WSESD board approve the capital plan in the amount of $4,106,743.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah.
Any discussion?
Deborah has moved that we should approve the capital plan in the amount of $4,106,733.
43.
43. Thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Why has your microphone live?
If I could speak just for a moment. This capital plan that Frank's been and the central office has been working on so diligently for so long represents a tremendous amount of work that has been done in the sustainability. So if you look at the first page of the capital plan, you'll see all the projects, and it's really gratifying. Once again, go through the warrants and see the amount of the change from fossil fuel to a renewable fuel in every site except for one, which is in the process of having that implemented. So the motion that I made really does just say that it's what it is actually having acquiescence of the board approves this capital plan, and so that it can be forwarded without any encumbrance at all, so that all the projects can just fall into line as they need to with tremendous amount of work.
Maybe if I could add to that, because so often more than $1 million project, you might expect a bond vote, but the plan identifies $2 million in grant funding. I think $1 million of that is fairly assured. It's the ESSER money, and we've had great success in qualifying projects through the Agency of Ed's construction team review process. The other $1 million I reported on last board meeting that it's a Department of Energy grant that we're waiting to see. If that grant doesn't come in, the project would be contingent upon that funding. We would have to change the scope of the project. I mentioned that we do have $250,000 for this Oak Grove improvement to go to a heat pump based heating system, along with a lot of thermal improvements, changing windows, improving insulation in the roofing systems and so on. So I just want to mention there is no debt needed to move forward with this plan as it's presented, and we really don't change our $3.8 million cash reserve in the capital fund with this proposal.
I know we're gonna talk about Natowich Field, it's an unfinished business, but just before we approve this, for Frank, Natowich Field, we go from fiscal year 23,
Can
25,000.
you give a page number, please?
Sorry, that's on
Page
the
8.
second to last page. Under BUHS capital plan.
Yeah, the page number.
Page 8.
Oh, there it is,
Yeah.
page 8. So you go from 25,000 to 175,000 to 250,000. Why the big jumps?
We're gonna have that discussion real soon, but it's recognizing all the work that has been done over the last 5 years. And in terms of analyzing Tenney Field, Natowich Field, Sawyer Field are basically our campus student use. I think maybe Chris Sawyer might have some data for us to talk about the gaps that we have in meeting student need and recognizing that we've deferred maintenance on those fields, and this begins to address that. Going beyond fiscal year 24, it's very undefined, but just based on what we know it takes to establish a durable grass surface, irrigate and so on, and knowing that we haven't really renovated that field since 1965, that's the scope of the work.
So, I think 3.5 years ago, the voters approved an article to resurface Natowich Field. What amount was put on that?
Well, that was specifically for a synthetic field, and there was a bid process. It was based on a preliminary estimate. The estimate was about 1.2 million.
I didn't know it was specifically for a synthetic field. I thought that it was turf, was just undefined.
No, it was specifically for a synthetic field.
Okay.
And it was clarified, if you go out to the minutes of that meeting on June 12th, there was a discussion. Our former board chair helped clarify that. It's in the room right behind you of the BUHS district. So if you went back to those minutes, you would see that there was quite a bit of public discussion about that topic.
I remember.
And that was the BUHS 6. That was pre-merger.
That's right. That was June 12th, 2019.
Okay. May I ask a clarifying question? And this is kind of to Sean and Frank together in response to things you're saying. So I think this is a great presentation, and I'm very thankful for how much work you put in to make it readable. Thank you. But related to the Natowich Field, particularly, I'm a little bit confused about, if we, in approving this capital plan, my assumption would be the board, it is okay with these expenditures, move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Natowich, which it feels a little bit less, I know you've said moving past 2024 is less formed. I guess I'm wondering, does that mean that 2024 isn't that expenditure of however much, 175,000, isn't to start the turf field?
That's right. It's
just a regular. It's just
safe,
resurfacing.
A safe, plain surface. We'll hear soon about scenarios that may expand Tenney Field and other resources on the campus. So yes, you're correct, Ruby, in assuming that is not some kind of a phase one of a renovation. It's making sure it's a safe playing surface. It's addressing the deferred maintenance on that field. But knowing that fiscal year 25, once we go through a process and we do get the insight from the architect, the specialists, and in our administration, we'll have a much better definition of what the 25-6 plan is.
Thank you.
Is there anyone? Jamie, I believe you have your hand up.
I just was at meetings years ago about the Natowich, how important it was that we resurface. But I just wanted to share that my memory was that when we use the word synthetic, there was a huge amount of discussion of what that means. Massive. We have a lot of board members, but a number of them who are new. So I just want to make sure we clarify what synthetic means.
Can I suggest that we hold off on a discussion of Natowich? Because as you look at the agenda, it comes later on. So could we just stay focused on dollars and cents right now?
Yeah, I would just say, if I could, you know, the 4 million, I mean, the amount, the $4 million is really for things that have been planned for a long time. And it's all a process, so that and it's very important that the board actually vote in the affirmative of this so that everything can move along and all those projects that have been pre-planned actually can come to fruition.
Okay.
Also, just to thank you, Sean, the funding partners require a board vote that indicates support. So of the 42 projects, 9 of them we expect to be funded through grant money. So the record of this meeting is also important for me to begin those funding applications, and they can take anywhere from 3 months to a year. There's a lot of give and take on that in that process. So that's why it's important to have a definitive vote.
Okay. I think we'll take one more question, and actually we'll take 2. We'll do Liz and then David, and then after that we're going to move on to the actual motion. Liz?
Yes. I think I wanted, it's actually about Natowich, and I think I want to ask Frank. My memory says that although the BUHS board voted to do that, the WSESD board did not.
Liz, I'm going to actually ask you to hold off on that until we get to the, if you can just jot down your question, and maybe we can address that just in a little bit. And David, was yours on?
It's specifically
on the numbers?
Yeah, I don't have the plan in front of me. I don't know which projects are under the COVID funding, but are any of them possibly not going to be done by the end of the year when the funding goes away, where the district would have to make up the difference?
We can't predict the supply chain issue, interruptions, and so on, but they have been getting minimized, those disruptions and the uncertainty in planning a project. But lining up the engineering and the architectural, and then setting the bid schedule, particularly for any of the projects that are over 500,000, it requires a pre-qualification process. Many of you on the board may remember that, but that is a specific statutory requirement around board meeting, establishing a criteria to qualify, interviewing interested vendors, and then awarding. At an absolute minimum, it's a 90-day process. The board for the Academy project delegated that to a committee, a board group, and that worked well. But yeah, all of the projects proposed that are to be funded with ESSER money, we have experience articulating the connection between the pandemic and how this investment improves our resilience in the event of a similar situation in the future. So we're confident that we'll qualify.
Well, isn't the qualifying, it's just if the money runs out, if the money stops coming before the project's done, then are you left hanging with the bill?
Yeah, the funding ends in the first quarter of fiscal year 25, and all of these projects that we are anticipating, they're not particularly complicated projects. So, yeah.
Jamie, I see you have your hand up. We were cutting in and out. Is your question or comment to do with the numbers or on the capital plan, or is it to do with Natowich Field?
Why, Mama? For me?
Why, Mama? Yeah, yes.
Why? All I was asking, Zoe, you have to be quiet so I can ask my question. I just wanted to confirm that what was being voted on by the board today did not commit the process of a specific surface type. This is just designating money, and we'll go through that same process we went through years ago where there was a massive public discussion about our values and what surface type we would use on the fields.
No, we are not making a commitment. We are dipping our toes into that topic this evening. Currently, right now, Frank is trying to have us address the capital plan. We do have on the agenda to speak a little bit more about the about Natowich, but it's not no motion is going to be made or
About the surface area.
Right.
or decision made.
Fiscal year '24 is a maintenance of the field to make it a safe playing surface, which means it's working within the existing medium that we have.
Did you hear that, Jamie?
I did. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, you're welcome. Eva?
Would the resurfacing include reseeding the area, putting organic grass?
I'm going to ask you to hold on to that question until we get to the Natowich, just so we can get past the capital plan.
Okay.
But it's a good question, so if you wouldn't mind jotting that down and bringing it back up in just a little bit. Are there any other questions about the capital plan? Okay, so Deborah has made a motion, and I will ask the clerk to read it again.
Okay, let me scroll back up here. Deborah moved that we approve the capital plan in the amount of $4,106,743.
Okay, so we've had discussion. All those in favor of approving the capital plan as indicated, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So I see we have financial statements next. I'm being asked to insert a break, a 5-minute very quick break in here. How long will the financial statements take? Should we?
It would be 2 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to wait for the break until after the 2 minutes for the financial statements.
Okay, so again, passed out financial statements that are also distributed last Thursday, Friday to the board. I think the one statement to for our comment this evening, and as I did with Finance Committee, the balance sheet on the website indicates in the general fund, 7.5 million in assets, 2.3 million in liabilities, and the balance sheet is the most important measure of fiscal solvency and stability. So when you have 7 million in assets, 2 million in liabilities, that derives a $5 million fund balance. That is what we began the fiscal year with. The difference between revenue and expenses year to date as of April 30th, 2023 is 112,000, which is where we expect to be. So we're in good financial condition as of third quarter of the fiscal year, and we're getting ready to close another fiscal year here in just 6 weeks, and we'll update the board with final results against the 23 plan.
Are there any questions? Okay, so anything else?
That's my report.
Well, thank you very much. So that includes the fiscal report. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. It is 7:35, so we will start at 7:40. And we will go right into public comment on non-agenda items. We are back from our break, right into public comment on non-agenda items. We've allotted 10 minutes.
Is the Zoom on?
Zoom is on.
Okay.
It's just not being shared on the big screen.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
thank
wanna
you.
make sure
Thank you,
everybody was in
Robin,
the
for staying.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the big screen. No. Oh, we'll be back in a moment.
Can you hear us in Zoom land? Can somebody, Lana, can you?
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you for that confirmation. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories: receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned, receive an immediate response by the board chair or administration. Administration would be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session. A public hearing would be held on the matter. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment on non-agenda items? I will ask a second time. Public comment on non-agenda items? And third time, public comment on non-agenda items. Okay, I see none, so we are moving on to unfinished business. I did sexual abuse investigation update. I did mention earlier that we have spoken with our attorney and we are working on what data to gather to be released to the public. We will be speaking with our attorney this evening, so that is something that we are working on. That we are actively working on getting that information to release. David.
Yeah, just a question. I'm not sure if new members are aware that the board's early commitment was to transparency as the best legal strategy. That's okay. You don't need to hear that. Okay.
Mindy.
Hi, thank you. So I just want to start by, because of some of the buzz that happens in the media, I just want to start by saying every time that I have a lot of respect for each and every board member and I trust in your intent in this. But with that said, I also want to say that throughout the process of the investigation and some of the things that have occurred related to it, there has been a lot of information withheld that I understand are for justified reasons, based on the Vermont statutes are really available and readable online. They're pretty accessible. So I have understood at times why some of the information was protected. But I also have noticed that some information has been protected not because of any legal statute or reason, but because of the advice of the district's lawyers, which seems more aimed at protecting the district's liability, which doesn't always translate directly into protection of students or mitigating harm to survivors. So I want to point out that when I met with a lawyer to bring forward when I worked with a lawyer to bring forward my original article about the investigations into Zeke Hecker's behavior and all of the responses to that, I was incredibly committed to bringing that information forward. And so when I worked with a lawyer, I worked with a lawyer to figure out how to do that. The whole purpose was to figure out how to get that information out. And so I guess I just want to ask the board in meeting with whichever lawyer you're consulting with about the report from Goddard. I know, first of all, that I've connected a lot of people with Goddard. I've helped direct witnesses to Goddard. I've helped send, other information, supporting information I might have. So I know that Attorney Goddard has received a lot of information and a lot of corroborating information. So I'm sure there's much to report. So I just wanted to ask that the board, rather than letting the lawyers direct you, which tends to result in more institutional behavior, which is protective of the institution, protective of the people associated with the institution, Just that the board ask your lawyer to help you bring the information forward. Just very simply, because I believe your commitment to transparency. I believe your intent to do right by students, protecting students, and to do right by survivors and people who were harmed. But I want to ask you just to direct your lawyers to help you do that, to help you bring forward the information in a way that protects the survivors but does not protect the wrong people and doesn't focus primarily on protecting the district from liability, but on making this right, please. So I know that's what a lawyer helped me do. So I know it's possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mindy. I appreciate that you have assisted people in connecting them with Attorney Goddard's office, because that's really the only way that the process was going to move forward. You may recall, if my memory serves me right, the community wanted to have some, there was some distrust of the board, the administration, the board's regular attorney, just sort of, they wanted some amount of other parties who were essentially ensuring that the process was moving and that nothing was being covered up, etc. So you will likely be keeping in mind that we have tried to keep a distance from the actual investigation. The board has not been doing the investigation. If we had been doing the investigation ourselves, it might have made it a little easier for us to then provide this information. But because we have not, that's partially been because that's what the community had, my recollection is that's what the community had wanted, they requested. So that's where we are right now. We are in the process. Again, I said that the last meeting, we did meet with our attorney to try and work on gathering and determining information to provide to the public. Any process takes time. Nothing is immediate, and so especially if you're working with multiple parties, and so it's I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate you coming to every meeting and keeping this in the forefront of everyone's mind. But I will say we are actively working on that process, and we will again be meeting with our attorney to work on that process this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone? Anything else on this topic? Okay, so we will then move along to the Natowich field resurfacing. I can say that I will reiterate that no decision is being made this evening. This was another one of those topics that the community is very aware of. They would like to have input. They'd like to have an understanding of what's going on. It's a very big topic, and so it's understandable. It's coming back to the board after having been off our table for some time. So we have recently gotten some documents from Sean Murphy. Thank you very much, Sean. And Frank has sent us some documents. And so the board will need some time to kind of digest those documents. But I didn't want anyone to think that it's something that had fallen back off the table. So I do see that we might have someone here who
yeah, Kelly, so I can jump in a little bit?
I'm handing it back to Mark.
Okay.
Yes.
So our goal here tonight is to just clarify the challenges that we're facing based on the size of our campus, the amount of fields that we have, and some of the equity issues that we want to address as soon as we can. I don't believe tonight there's time for discussion around grass or synthetic. Like, we'll be here all night long. Our goal really is identifying, first of all, putting on the table what the challenges are that we're facing, and then also showing you steps that we're taking to proactively meet those challenges in the near future like this summer for next school year, and then for the following school year. So with that, I'll ask Chris Sawyer, our athletic director, to talk a bit about all of the programs that we offer, and which is great, but the challenges that come with all of the programs with the size of our campus.
Want me to go anywhere that's easier, or?
Maybe sit next to Robin.
Oh, no, actually, I think that's better.
You'll be in the.
I love that, love the camera. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so a few years ago, we did come here and had a lot of conversation about fields. And since that time, there was a Gale Associate report that was put out that they came here and really did an analysis of our fields. And, you know, what it turned out to be is we really have a 5-field deficit for the things that we're putting on. And, you know, as Mark just said, we do have a crowded situation. We offer a lot of things in the fall. We have boys and girls soccer, football, and field hockey. Those are the field sports. We have other sports, but those are the field sports that we're trying to accommodate JV and varsity levels at all of those sports. And then in the spring, we're really starting to grow a little bit, of middle school soccer and field hockey as well. And then in the spring, we have middle school baseball, middle school softball, boys and girls lacrosse, and then we have high school baseball, softball, boys and girls lacrosse, and now we've added ultimate. And then we have track and field. So the track and field situation kind of blends into, there's a lot of athletes with javelin, and so they use the field space as well. So we just took an overall look at what could change, because our fields are overused, and part of the Gale Associate report just came in. They rated our fields on a scale of 1 to 5, how much use that we're getting. And the regulation, you know, the normal use for a grass field is 250 hours, and we're surpassing that everywhere. So that's why we came the last time, like what could help the most. So now we're here, and as Mark said, there are some immediate things we have done and can continue to do. So a few years ago, in recognition that one of our biggest issues was our field hockey program did not have a field that would allow them to host playoff games. Because in field hockey, a grass field can't have any other lines for another sport, and it can't have dirt on the field. And if anyone's familiar with soccer, even the penalty kick area, you might have little circle, not a softball size, that would deem a field hockey field unusable. So no matter if our field hockey team was having a successful year or not, even if they could host playoff games, we would have to travel on the road to play those games. So one thing we did is we moved the field hockey field from Tenny Field, and the reason that was not usable really for field hockey is because of the dirt infield. So we moved that field to Sawyer Field, which is a larger field than Tenny Field. So now we play field hockey in the fall, and that's dedicated to field hockey. So that was a that was a good thing that we did. However, that's created other challenges. So now we have field hockey over there, but in the fall we have football and varsity boys and girls soccer on Natowich under the lights with a grandstand, with a press box, with a PA in the middle of our campus, while our field hockey field has no lights, has no press box, no grandstand, no accessible bathrooms. That, you know, we're working on that this spring, but it really, it's not a Title IX violation, but it's a Title IX consideration. It's something, you know, it's a forgotten sport because of its location, and they don't have the same environment as other athletes. So while they now have a great field, and I think that's probably the best field on campus, they're lacking in other things. So that's one issue we face in the fall. And then the spring is probably our biggest issue, because, you know, since we last talked, we have added an varsity ultimate team and middle school boys and girls lacrosse teams. And we don't own a field that's not connected to a baseball diamond, a softball diamond, inside a track, or removed from a track. So everything's adjacent or inside a track, or a baseball, softball. And when we have lacrosse balls being thrown around and javelins intermingling, it's not the best thing. So we have to do a lot of moving things around. So currently we have 6 lacrosse teams counting the middle school. And for high school baseball, softball, and 4 more middle school baseball, softball, along with a pretty healthy track program. So we just don't have a lot of space and we don't have a lot of options. Fortunately, we're using Familari Field this year. Last year, we were not able to because they use it for other purposes as well, and other users just left tire ruts in the field and we just could not repair them. This year, we were able to do that. And fortunately, that's where boys lacrosse goes this year. Girls lacrosse is on Natowich Field, which is that's nice for them, but that's another 36 practices on a field that is already overused. So that's kind of our spring issues. And in the fall, we did, before we came about, to talk about Natowich Field, we only played football on that field. And football alone is a very damaging sport. But since then, because we didn't use the field for an entire year because of COVID, that field was beautiful, and we tried for the first time to put varsity boys and girls soccer on it. And that was great, but you can really see the wear and tear, and that field's deteriorating quickly. And once you put soccer on a field, you're not going to take it off, right? It's a great venue. So that's kind of our issue with that situation. To Mark's point, one thing we could do is we have Tenney Field, and the grandstand is there. And Tenney Field's a nice area, but our infield itself is very old. It's probably over 50 years old. And if you ever went to the baseball field and stood on the infield, you would see outside the dirt infield probably a 1-foot rise just from the years of wind blowing and grooming that field. So that field really needs repair. So one thing we could do is move that field a little closer to the grandstand, which would enlarge the outfield of Tenney Field, and then we could bring back field hockey to that spot. And while it might not be on Natowich Field because that field's so bumpy, at least it would be in a central location. At least it would have lights and bathrooms, and then we could address the bleachers and PA and that kind of stuff as well. So that would be one step we could do. We would just move soccer back to Sawyer Field where it was. So Tenney Field could at least buy us some time, at least helping field hockey while we consider what we can do to gain additional fields.
Great, Chris. That was a good summary. Another thing we're exploring in terms of Tenney Field is utilizing the grandstand in multiple ways. So not just as a place for spectators for sports, but how do we turn that into a multi-purpose area? And in terms of adopting some outdoor classrooms, renovating the guts of the grandstand, so to create more locker space or meeting space for visiting teams when they come to us. So we're exploring many options on Tenney because we have a big grandstand there that's a historical structure, and it's not really giving us a good look right now. It's not usable, but we could turn that into a potentially multi-purpose space to use in the fall and the spring, while also accommodating a larger outfield to create more options with our other sports teams.
If I'm remembering correctly, there was a group who was interested in helping to preserve that. Was there any funding coming through them? What was the? Potentially.
So we actually just started actively getting engaged with that group again.
Okay.
So there's some positive possibilities down the road that we could explore. With the reality of this summer, like there's not going to be a major field renovation this summer. There's just not enough time. But we will have to sink some money into our fields to improve them and get them ready for the fall sports. I don't know if there's more to add, Chris or Cassie.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with Ricky Athier, our facilities director, and Chris to sort of look at the different scenarios. The Gale report was really specific, giving us different scenarios, but again, that was a lot of those options were centered around, going with a turf field and I think that's a longer conversation, but in terms of the equity issues of being able to move field hockey up under the lights and then share that space, you know, we figured out the bathroom situation for Sawyer Field. So, you know, they access the Career Center bathrooms. So, you know, we've been able to solve that issue. But, you know, there is a Friends of Tenny that is a community group that, you know, are really strong advocates for preserving the grandstand. And I think, you know, just a month or two ago, we heard the wonderful presentations from other schools about outdoor learning areas. And I believe it's our floodwater permit does not allow us to build any additional structures on our campus. And so what that means is we can't build a pavilion. We can't put up something permanently that will cover more land without then, you know, finding more land elsewhere. And so being able to update those grandstands, and I know that Ricky Athier met with that group last week and has forwarded some of the initial plans onto a field consultant and engineer just to get some ideas of what that would look like that we can then, you know, bring to this group. Addressing the need for outdoor learning space is super important for our students and staff. Any nice day you come to campus, you see groups sprawled out all over. And having a space outdoors where there's access to bathrooms, there'd be access to Wi-Fi, there'd be, you know, somewhat comfortable seating, would really meet a need on campus. So.
Yeah, so aside from synthetic or regular grass in terms of a major project down the road, maybe obviously not this summer, but the following summer, the focus really is collaborating with Chris, with the administration, the custodial department, reaching out to engineers to see what's possible, and you know, taking steps as quickly as we can to improve the experience for students. Because ultimately, you know, we want to highlight our students, cheer them on, provide really good environments that a high school student should be able to experience sooner than later in all of our sports.
How many different sports teams do we have?
I think I know that. 16, I would venture to say. Sports, not teams.
Okay, yeah, 16 seems reasonable, but you know, the student population has been pretty stable over the last years. It's around 270, I think. Is there any thought, I have to ask it, to cutting down on the number of sports?
Yeah, you know, that would be, it's actually the opposite, because as we're learning, you know, as time goes on, different things become relevant, and, you know, maybe not field sports necessarily, but ultimate has become popular. And now we see students would like to consider volleyball and golf and gymnastics teams. So those have all been proposals in the last 3 months that students have made written requests that we add as sports. And yet our numbers dipped a little bit participation-wise after COVID, but this year for the first time they've kind of rebounded to where they were pre-COVID. So I think our numbers are as stable as they've ever been. The student body maybe gets smaller, but I think the participation rates in sports are continuing to rise, if not just maintain. So no, I don't see how we really could be looking to cut sports. I think the bigger question is, how are we going to add more?
And what is the participation rate, about 50%?
Yeah, I'd say it's about 50%. We have like, I don't know, I was working on that today and I never totaled the number, but it's right around 50. It's pretty high.
And I'll just say, you know, I don't live too far from here, and something that we've seen in my area is schools having to co-op because they don't have enough students to support this. And I think that not just in regards to athletics, but, you know, anything outside of academics that is a buy-in for a student in our community that is meaningful to them and important, I think we have to continue to support. And so, as like Chris said, as we're seeing the numbers either stabilize or increase, you know, it would be an injustice to then take that from the students. And I'm not suggesting anyone is saying that. But I think, you know, figuring out how we can sort of address these issues in the immediate with, you know, the quick fixes, and then continue the conversation and collaboration with the board ongoing to figure out what are the next steps and what's the timeline to solve these problems, hopefully for good, is really the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I don't, just a quick number, we seem to have, I just looked at the enrollment today, so I don't, but there seem to be 772 students. And right now, spring alone, we have 422 different students playing a sport. So.
And I'd also add to that, there's a population within our community that aren't involved with a ton going on at school. And so it's part of our mission to say, how do we get you engaged within our community? So providing more and more opportunity for these students is huge. And I think that really stems with how are we bolstering our facilities around our campus and making it an outlet for the students that currently don't feel like they're attached to anything, and then really going after those students. So we might say 50% now, but our numbers could be even higher if we're providing the right outlets and the right facilities that our students deserve and need to be successful in something like that.
And I'll just add too, I don't think it's just about participation in the sports, but like the amount of, you know, students that come out to support their classmates that participate in these. We had a really exciting basketball season with our student section, for example, but I think that that is also a connection. And I feel that way about, you know, the music department when I see athletic teams come to see, you know, the spring musical to support, you know, their classmates. So it's a whole, I think, community conversation to be had.
And just to add on to what Chris and Kathy just said, it's not just about sports either, like we look at those fields in sports, but we have intramurals, we have clubs, we have phys ed, so there's a lot going on in those fields.
I just wanted to add to Chris's totals that those 772 are just high school. So you add in all the middle school, you've got well over 1,000 kids on the campus. So if you got 50% in the high school, you got at least that in the middle school.
Okay, so I think we can move on from this topic because I think it's the board needs time to look at what we have, and maybe if we have other questions that after looking at the documents, and maybe we can.
Could I also bring up the point that having just one thing that I thought you were going to mention that wasn't mentioned, and having a synthetic turf field would allow for us to have wheelchair sports on Natowich, which is something that we don't have. And as far as I know, we don't have any options for intramural or unified wheelchair sports at BUHS right now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that.
And I just like to add one quick thing, and that is that I've been doing a little research, and they're now using walnut shells as inner fill for fields. And I visited a field recently for a relative's game that was actually had the walnut shells rather than chopped tires.
Well, if
which
you
was
have
really nice.
information that you think might be helpful, then
I'll
maybe
see if
you
I can get some.
Send it to us. Yes, thank you.
I feel better about it than chopped tires.
Yeah.
They also use coconut shells, which is what we were promised all those years ago when we voted to put in an artificial field in the first place.
Okay. Well, I have a feeling we will be reviewing all that, and
I'd just like to make one thing if I could.
Sure.
I'd really like to thank Yago because he was the one that originally brought this up more recently, and so I commend you for your forethought there.
Thank you. I'm not the only one. I'm the one who shows up to these meetings, but the student support for this conversation is really big. So I just like to say that there's a lot of people who are weighing in on this, and this is not going unheard in the student population. People really care about this, and no, we circulated a petition, got 200 names in 2 hours. You know, yeah, it's a big talking point.
And what was the nature of the petition?
It was, do you care about this? Are you behind a synthetic turf field? Do you want to join a group that's working on this? What's your email? Yeah. I can give you more specific numbers if you want. We thought to do another petition, but it just didn't seem that the conversation was happening enough at that time to do that. Because we don't know all the options, I'm sure if we had a survey with if the board came up with a list of okay, here's our options, we could, do this, we could get walnuts, we could get coated crumb rubber, we could get chopped up tires, we could get another field in Hinsdale, whatever, people could, people would be able to, pick and choose, and then you would have a lot more student voice that's specific.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now we will move on to the BUHS school branding.
So after the last meeting, was charged with developing a process for engaging the school community to come up with a new name, a new mascot for next school year. So I'll give an overview, and I'll ask Chris and Cassie and Hannah to chime in, because they're really the boots on the ground implementing the work with the students. So on Monday, an email went out to the students and staff with essentially identifying the statute which led to the decision at the last board meeting. That was done on Monday. Also on Monday, a Google form was sent out to all students and staff, asking them to, if they want to please share an idea around a new name and mascot and give the reason why behind that. Additionally, that form was asking for volunteers to serve in a leadership capacity to form a steering committee after we collect all of this data. So these applications are due on Friday, the 12th. And no, the submissions of the names are due on Friday, the 12th. And then by Tuesday, the 16th, the administration will identify a leadership team moving forward. Between the 16th and May 19th, that team will be reviewing the mascot options that have been shared. There will be a first round of voting that takes place on May 22nd. Second round of voting to take place on May 24th. And with the idea of a final round of voting to take place on May 26th. On Monday, May 29th, we will be giving our proposal of a new name to potential graphic designer, who we would then hire to start developing some renderings that would push us to the end of the school year. So our goal is, by the end of the school year, we have identified a new name, a new mascot, and then over the summer months, we use that time to look into new uniforms, look into names on scoreboards, look into names on signs, but start to address the physical rebranding on campus that would need to take place, as well as uniform updates that would need to take place. And many others, student staff badges, our website. It's going to be a lot of work, but I will say there's excitement in the air. I don't want to speak for all of the kids, but I think there is excitement in this moment in time where they have the ability to choose the next mascot for the next 100 years, potentially, for the school. And that's kind of a powerful thing when you think about it in that way, in terms of an opportunity to move forward as a school. So,
Just a possible way that you guys could save yourself some time and some money. I mean, we have a fantastic graphic design program at the high school, so I don't think you would need to hire someone else to do it. I mean, students could even vote, that could happen this year.
yeah. So those are the details that the leadership team will kind of review and work on together. Another element I do want to add to this process is We worked with South Burlington High School principal Patrick Burke, who went through this process 6 or 7 years ago. So we engaged in a Zoom phone call with him. We shared our proposal, asked for feedback from him based on his experiences, and that was a really nice collaborative way that we feel like we've learned from mistakes of other schools and have a process in place that's really going to engage the school community, particularly the students.
Yeah, it's not just choosing a name, but it's choosing a name that embraces the values of the school. I would hope that the steering committee and the student body, when they put forth their ideas for a new name, include the principles, the values that symbol represents. That's most important.
Yeah, I got total faith in the kids.
Yeah, I just want to add I feel like we have, as a school, have really been able to kind of shape this into something very positive and unifying for our community. And not to say that there haven't been students that have been saddened and come to see us, and we've explained sort of historically what came behind it, what sort of the history behind it, and the email that went out to advisories, because that was the advisory activity on Monday, was to read the email, have a community discussion, and then if you'd like to submit different names. And I mean, as of right now, I had a few teachers email me separately aside from the form with some suggestions their advisory came up with, but just the Google form, we have 112 responses. And some of them are the same, but I think students are excited about it. I think they recognize that this is a really positive change. And to comment on what you just said, Tim, there's, asking for the why behind somebody is coming, why somebody is bringing forward the suggestion. It's been so interesting to read the ties of like how they're connecting this symbol to the school and our values, and what we strive to be. And really the only guideline was on the form, it had to be a gender neutral mascot, and it couldn't be colonels.
Be what?
Couldn't be colonels. And the hope is that we've had 36 people, students and staff combined, volunteer to be on the screening committee. And so the hope is that, we can sit down collaboratively, come up with norms around what that looks like. And then our graphic design teacher has actually volunteered to take the final submissions and provide the students with an outlet to create their own visual around it so they can present the visual. But the suggestion from South Burlington was that when it comes to the actual official branding that we have on uniforms or on signs or whatever, that does come from a professional. But I do foresee the opportunity to get our art students involved in like their own perception of our new mascot, whatever it is.
Totally.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Lana and then to Ruby and then to Deborah. Lana?
First, thank you so much for this, Mark and the team. You guys moved really quickly, and I'm really excited about your timeline, and I love your ideas. What question I have is how is there a way to involve the larger school community? Ideally, or not ideally, most of the students from all of our schools end up going to the high school. And so, there's so many stakeholders. And I'm wondering if there's a way to involve more community members and having people be able to pitch suggestions or to feel like they're owning this as well. So just a thought. Thank you so much again.
I'll just say we did talk about involving the 8th graders and kind of were split on whether or not to do that. I do feel strongly, and I've seen this process play out personally as a board member in another area, that oftentimes there are really strong emotional ties within the community to the old mascot or logo, and I appreciate those, and I think those are important. But with that comes a resistance to change sometimes, and so it really feels important to me, and I'm only speaking on my own beliefs here, but it feels important to me that because this is an experience that our students are having to go through in the moment, and a big change for some, in recognizing that there are emotions tied to that, and also wanting the process to be very clear and move quickly. It really did feel like, using our student body in the now was important.
That makes complete sense, Cassie. I was thinking it as I was saying it, and it's unfortunate that it would certainly make the process a lot longer. I would just love if there was some way to, to include folks, but I understand that if it's just not feasible. Thank you so much again.
But we're excited to find opportunities when it's decided to introduce it to the greater community so that they embrace it as well.
Yeah, I have a ton of faith in our students and the leadership team and our staff to really follow through on this process and develop a great vision for moving forward.
I'd just like to second what Lana said in terms of praise, and the timeline is great. I really like hearing it. And my thought also echoes an involvement piece, and it harkens back to the report that we talked about earlier and the BUHS Leadership Council asking, when can we be involved in the decision? And so I guess I just encourage you to think about ways to, even if it's like an active report out, or bring students or just a sharing, and then they can ask you directly, what ways can we be involved and why didn't you ask us? Because I do think that that's come up at this point.
Yeah, I do think because we have student and staff representation, both of those are part of the leadership council and are involved in this, because staff was also invited to participate. But yes, I do look forward to conversations with the leadership council around how this is supported moving forward. It's important.
Robin?
Yes, I also agree. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Sorry. I also agree that this seems like a really thoughtful, well-considered process, and that it is something that's impacting our whole community, and that I think it sounds right that the high school students and staff are the ones who are conducting this process. But I think we also need to recognize that there is, like you said, Cassie, there's feelings about this in all of the adults in the community, probably primarily them, but also kids in the other schools. And I would hope that there is education and conversations occurring around this. I know that it is coming up in the middle school from reports that I've heard in my own family about how, what led to this name needing to be changed. How does it violate the statute that says that we cannot have school branding that references people or organizations associated with the repression of others, and what did that look like? Some of the things that we learned about at our last meeting, and how this name represented colonialism and erasure of indigenous people. It's been used to install fear and marginalize minority populations. So I really hope that we're making space for those conversations in our other schools and where it's coming up in our community.
I would like to, as you're going through this process, and it needs to be done quickly. And if it's going to be done quickly, then I appreciate what Lana is saying as well, that you need a smaller core decision-making group. It would be nice to engage the entire middle school, as well as the middle schools in the 3 elementary schools in the 3 towns. However, I appreciate that we need to do this quickly, and if we're going to do it, I also don't think that, nothing is forever.
Right.
Right, we understand that, but we will select a name, a branding that is clean. And again, that reflects the values of the community. All this has already been said. I would like to just call attention to the policy D17, which is the offshoot of, which is the statute. The wording is exactly the same. And one of the things that it states is administrative responsibilities. The superintendent or designee shall periodically review. That's one bullet. 2, assist the school board in its review of, and it goes on. And number 3, assist the school board in ensuring the prohibition of school branding that directly or indirectly references, and it goes on. So I just call attention to that language, the language of assist the school board. This clearly belongs in your court. We get it. At the same time, in terms of the wording of this policy, the school board must be involved in the decision-making process, ultimately, based upon the language of the policy.
Yeah,
I just want to throw that out there.
We're committed to providing updates along the way.
Right.
And then bringing the recommendation of the student body to the board and sharing the why behind that recommendation.
Right.
And I would envision students being the ones to do that. I mean, I
Absolutely.
think that having the students involved in the process, coming and then presenting it to the board, you know, and sharing more about how the process did look and the why behind it, and being excited about it. That's, I guess, maybe the last piece of this that wasn't.
So I want to just mark into what Habame said at the last meeting, and that is even as we move forward, we look at the present, we move forward, as Habame says, we also need to acknowledge the harm that's been done. And so in light of what you're saying, Cassie, as students come before the board, and it really should be student voices, you're absolutely right. It would also, as you said, be nice for the board to hear what the process is, as well as to hear what some of the name considerations are, because it's not just going to be, it should not just be one out there, right? Okay.
Four layers
Right.
of voting, so
Yeah.
it'll be pared down along the way.
Right,
Yeah.
right, okay, thank you.
Any other, Jamie, I believe you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say thank you to the whole team who's moving this forward quickly, to Mark and others who are doing the labor, and for the opportunity. I was just thinking about Tim's presentation earlier, and what a wonderful opportunity this is for the intersection of sports and how we show up with a lens within DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I just really am excited about this opportunity. I hope that, and I think I heard you say this, Mark, that the policy or the statute was shared, but that even maybe we could produce a one-pager that would be kind of educational for the public when questions come up or people join the leadership, whatever you called it, the leadership decision team. What did you call it?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I spoke too loudly. I called it a press release.
No worries. Oh, yeah, just anything that's a kind of a simple overlay of our understanding of the statute and the passing of the policy, and what the mandate is of the committee that's going to be doing the work in the process by which you just outlined. Just something simple, but with the goal just being at the center of it to make sure that a mascot is really, and a name is really representative of our entire community, with our passion and commitment to equity in our district. So thank you for the opportunity, and I love that we're doing this work. Thanks.
Any other questions?
May I ask one little question? At the end of the document that's shared, I know that there's some historical kind of representation of what went down when the image was removed. And one of the things that was outlined were understandings. And one of the understandings was, we're going to see this, the kernel image, and we're just not going to sell it and things like that. So I guess I just wanted to say I appreciated seeing that, because there's a reality that we're not burning them all. Right. Like everyone's going to have the jackets, and some people are going to wear them because they are going to wear them. Yeah. And so acknowledging that and stating what, you're not going to be policing to what degree, things like that. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, one of the things Patrick shared with us was that, yeah, that'll happen for a little while, but it dissipates really quickly because people get really jacked up about the new mascot and they want to be part of the new vision. So we'll see how it plays out, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I had staff email me after the last meeting and say, can I not wear my Colonel sweatshirt tomorrow? And, you know, it existed. We can't just take that out of history. It existed. But now we move forward. Like, we can recognize that, and we can also recognize, you know, the issues with that. But now's our opportunity for change and moving forward, so that's important.
We'll celebrate this moment of the decision by having T-shirts and coming to a board meeting with a T-shirt. That would send a message, wouldn't it?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for working on getting that together, and I can imagine it, a lot of players, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, and so that's, thank you very much, and to everyone who is working on that with you.
It's safe to say we're excited about it. It's an opportunity to really move forward. That's exciting.
So we will move on to board matters training. There was a request to have a space on the agendas. At some point in the past, we had for committees and leadership council updates. So I'm not sure, I think a couple board members had sent me something, but I don't know if people aren't prepared this evening, this is kind of like the notice that we'll keep this on there. And but if anyone has any committee or leadership council update that they would like to share, you're welcome to do that now.
Can I ask for a clarification?
Sure.
You know, it's really, is there something of note to share, or, you know, because ultimately if a meeting hasn't happened or is coming up, that's on the website. Minutes are on the website, so it's.
If there's something that that's been discussed at the last meeting, or a question that they had, or something like that that you wanted to bring to the board to either share, or a question that you're kind of posing that might be.
I feel like at the Academy one, the questions that I remember were the stuff that we already talked about earlier during administrative updates about how will they get answers to the questions and such. So I feel like we sort of went out a little bit out of order with our conversation about that. It was a meta conversation about the conversation, but was what people were wanting to know.
And I know BAM's we were there last Thursday, and Keith was great. He gave the climate survey updates and how they're working on that. But the Leadership Council, they really wanted the board to want their opinion on matters before votes. They want to feel like the work that they're doing means something to the board, and that their opinion matters.
I do feel like we could come up with a process to notify people when something is upcoming. And because of what was said already about the timing of these meetings only being once a month and they're all in different weeks, that we might not catch everybody in time for them to say stuff before we meet on it, but we could catch the people who we could catch. So like, if we have stuff where we know we're gonna vote on a thing, we could just, send it out to all the leadership council chairs. We're gonna vote on our budget on this date, or, that one is very easy to predict when it will be. But there are other ones that come up in a more like immediate time scale that we could still send it out even if it wasn't gonna give everybody time to plan their discussion. You know what I'm saying? For the ones who did happen to have the luck of the timing, they could give feedback.
And actually one more, Maureen asked in terms of the rebranding, if there's funding eligible from the state, because we're going to be rebranding, because this is a state mandate, whether there's funds available to help with the cost.
That's a great question. I doubt it.
I know.
Frank just walked out, but Frank and I talked about this, and money's not going to get in the way. We're going to do the good work.
And yes, and we talked about that, but they're like, oh,
Yeah, it's worth.
Maybe we should ask the question.
It's certainly worth looking into, for sure.
I do think there have been opportunities with grant funding coming from, agencies that are working to really drive these changes in communities. So I think, obviously looking for grants takes time. So, that would be a decision about how deep we dive into that, but I think it's worth having a conversation about.
The PCS Leadership Council, one thing that I didn't actually think of as being relevant to the board, but I realize now it is. I told Paul Smith that we had some discussion around his presentation to the Leadership Council around the CIP and I think the climate survey. Maybe it was a CI, whatever, that stuff. And I think we had some feedback around the survey that went out and some thoughts or questions about that process. And so we'll be inviting Paul to hopefully a summer meeting, just to talk about it and to give some feedback. So that was a big part of it.
Okay. And I think Jamie has her hand up.
Maybe I said what Jamie was going to say.
Okay.
It's possible. You think we'll like
Can I ask one question? Ruby, is this the time to talk about committee assignments?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad I said that.
Thank you
Good.
very much.
Good.
So a committee that I was assigned to in the reorganizational meeting was the finance committee. And the timing of the committee meeting just doesn't mesh with my own ability to meet. So Ann Beekman and I spoke earlier before all of this, and she agreed to step into a role because we felt it was important to have Putney representation on the finance committee. So I don't know if there's action that needs to happen around that. That's my first thing.
Well, I'm not sure if we need to make a motion, but just to be safe, I'm sure that it is.
So I move that we accept Ruby McAdoo's resignation from the Finance Committee with regret. And as part of that, can I do it as part of the motion? That
Sure.
Ann Beekman assumes that role on finance with appreciation.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. That was a motion.
The motion has been made.
I will read the motion. Deborah has moved that we accept Ruby's, I'm sorry, I was still typing one word. Let me just finish doing that and then I'll read it.
Can I just make a comment? Kelly, I don't think you for a second once tonight.
Oh, good job.
You don't think I would?
You haven't asked for a second once.
You wait up the next time.
Okay, the motion was that we accept Ruby's resignation from the Finance Committee with regret and that Ann Beekman assume that role on the committee with enthusiasm.
Wait, am I being ordered to be enthusiastic?
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting with regret Ruby's resignation from the Finance Committee and Anne enthusiastically joining, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Okay.
And I have a second one because I apparently am a troublemaker. So I was additionally appointed to be the representative to the EES Policy Council, which is their version of a leadership council, and have been in touch with them and moving forward with that. Liz Adams, I don't know if she's still in the Zoom world, but she put in a specific request to, and it may be best for her to articulate it, but to be appointed in some capacity by the board as an ex officio member to that EES Policy Council. Is she there?
She is there.
Oh, she is?
Okay.
But
I mean, that's.
My only question on that is whether we have to actually have some, I mean, I am happy if Liz would like to continue to be, regardless of whether we have to have somebody from the who is serving on the board or not. But my question is, do we actually have to have someone who is serving on the board as well? That I don't know.
Right. And I guess I've had some email correspondence with Liz to try to get clarity in terms of what her request is. And so that's where I think hearing it from her might be helpful. But what I communicated to her that we might talk about at this meeting is my assumption is that this board does want a seated board member to represent. And so to the extent that her request is to be a community member who is appointed or involved, does that request come to us or come to the EES Policy Council? And I don't know to what degree her request was specifically related to the board's action to represent.
I'm going to ask.
As a community member, I would think that would go directly to the EES committee itself.
First of all, I just want to clarify something. The language ex officio does not refer to someone who used to be in that office. It means by status of their position. So for instance, an example of this is like when the Brattleboro Town School Board existed, those members were ex officio members of town meeting, even though we were not elected as town meeting reps, we got to vote because we were on the school board. So that is not anything to do with what Liz is asking. I just don't want to put confusing language into this. It seems like what she's asking is, can I still be on it as a community member, though I'm not on the school board anymore? And it seems like for other committees where we do have a community member as part of a board committee, that we do officially appoint them, like to the Communications Council or the Leadership Council. So I think that if we have the consent of EES, they can bring that recommendation. We would like to appoint Liz as a community member to this council, and then we can vote, yes, we will do that. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you for that recommendation. I agree with you to many degrees. I don't know that Liz has that same perspective, and so the language that Liz is using is ex officio and is very clear that she's not asking to be a community member. I guess my proposal would be, at this point, I've only been connected to the EES Policy Council to say, hey, I'm here, and be invited to their future meetings. Perhaps I could approach that the chair or the director of that group to just have a conversation with them about it, and bring and just report back at the next meeting. I haven't to this point because I really didn't know what. It was just a confusing moment that I didn't know what to do with that information and didn't want to overstep. So I guess that feels like a good next step, because I don't, unless I hear something otherwise, it does feel appropriate that a seated board member would serve. And I don't know that this board votes on all the other leadership councils and appointments to it. But I don't know that they do on the EES Policy Council, because
that's right.
And I don't really understand exactly why, but maybe I could have a conversation about that so I understand it better.
You're also dealing with families, and it's a lot of federally funded, and everything is set based on your dealing with vets.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's why I think
rules and regulations.
That's why I think it would be important to have their input, because if they have some regulations that this is going to cause trouble with, then obviously that would inform.
And that's just having served on that council for a number of years as part of the Brattleboro Town School Board.
So Ruby, you will go.
Yeah, I
would. Liz?
Yeah. There's another consideration here in ES Policy Council, and that is in general, the Policy Council was created by Head Start to help strengthen families in advocating for their child. And when you're working with families in general that qualify for Head Start, you have to be really careful in what you say and how you say it, because you're trying to lift people up here. So I think that, that needs to be in consideration. The ES Policy Council still wants me to be there. Deb had told me that a while ago. So, whether it's appointed by the board or whatever, I will still be there. But I just wanted to make note that this isn't like our other committees, and I understand all the federal funding and everything. I worked with, I had collaborated with them. I'm used to working with families who have special needs in terms of how we promote, how we help them to be able to speak up for their child. So, I mean, it's a different group. It's a different ball of wax altogether.
So I think the next step is to go and check it out and see what they say. But I also think that we have to be reserved as a board in appointing a community member as a stand-in for a board member, because that may open Pandora's box in terms of community members saying, well, wait a minute, this is a whole new ballgame. I'd like to be considered for this as well. So the shift going from a board assignment to a community member. Community members are, we know they're active, they're present, whether they are official or not. Anyway, I just want to throw that out, that I think we need to consider our position as a board. So I think it's a moot point right now. I think we need to come back to it. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anything else on committees or leadership councils before we can move on to, moving on to the hires and resignations.
Okay, I'll start with 2 resignations. Abby Maiello, Academy School, grade 3, and Will Lipinski, Oak Grove School, grade 6.
I move that we accept with regret the resignations of the staff members from Academy and Oak Grove.
Thank you, Robin. I assume you will not need to read that motion again. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Okay, and we have a handful of new hires. Probably gonna say these names wrong. John Trebua, BUHS Driver's Ed. Allison Taverna, BUHS English. Leah Rogstad, BUHS Spanish. Kristen Gottschalk, BUHS Health Driver's Ed. Mickey Parker Jennings, grade 6, Guilford. And Hannah Lindner Finley, Academy School, kindergarten, 1 year.
And Kristen's just health, not driver's ed student.
Okay. That's it.
I move that we accept with excitement the hires of these 6 employees.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. Now we will move very quickly to the WSESD Vermont Code of Ethics. And it is,
Just need some signatures.
copy, so it was, I believe this was sent out for everyone to you. Are there any questions or?
Thank
you. So, and I've communicated, I've sent an email to Kelly about this. I, in the past as a community member, and now I have redone it, the Putney Central School Leadership Council has they call them meeting norms that are established at the beginning of every school year, and we refer to them at the beginning of every meeting. And so I raised it again with Kelly because as I read through the Code of Ethics, there is reference to this board annually reviewing, they don't use the word meeting norms, I can't remember what it is, but reviewing meeting norms and accepting them and working by them. And so I asked, do we do that? And it could be a very good retreat discussion point or a future agenda item, but I think it might be worth considering, and I would offer up the PCS Leadership Council one as one example. There are many others, so that's what I got to say.
Thank you very much, Ruby, for sharing that with me before and also now. So what I will do is I will send that to everyone as sort of a template, and we can maybe at the next board meeting people can come with ideas, or maybe they'll just love what's there and will want to sort of maybe adopt that or kind of build onto that. Thank you. So I think that brings us to the end of the regular meeting. We just have executive session. So the first one, okay. So can I have a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at substantial disadvantage?
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor of making that finding on the first executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So now I would ask if there is a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A7, academic records or suspension or discipline of students, and inviting in Mark Spino and Melissa Kavanaugh. Is there a motion? So moved. Thank you very much. All those in favor of going into executive session as indicated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Who was the person that made that motion? Okay, I thought it was you.
This should not, I don't think it will take very long.
And are we expecting action after this executive session?
Yes, I think we may.
There may be.
We may have action after this, yes. So, we are in executive session at 8:53. We are back from executive session at 9:02. Is there a motion?
I move that this board uphold the recommendation of administration with regard to a student matter.
Although, now, Anne has made the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. So we will now, I will now make another motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at substantial disadvantage, with the understanding that a separate motion will be made to enter executive session on a executive session requested by the administration, and that would be inviting Mark Spino in. Is there a motion for that finding?
So moved. So moved.
Kim. Thank you, Anne, for that as well, but I'm giving it to Kim. All those in favor of that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so now is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3? I'm looking for it. I'm sorry. The appointment or employment of public officer or employee, provided the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during open meeting. Is there a motion to go into executive session as stated? Thank you, Anne.
Sure.
I'm sorry. It is late.
It was in the same direction.
It did. All those in favor of going into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We are in executive session at 9:05.
Will there be a decision after?
No, there will be no decision after that.
I'm sorry.
We will have
That was inviting Mark.
2 other executive sessions,
so.
but it will
Yes.
not be anything that will need action taken. So I'm not sure how that affects.
But are we coming back and then going into another
We
executive?
will.
Yes.
So there will be action afterwards.
I mean, we're not gonna take an action, but we
There will
will
be-
come out and
We
then
will
go
come
back.
out and then go back in.
And then vote on something.
So we're back from executive session at 9:24, and my apologies, there actually is action to be taken. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Yeah, so essentially, as explained to the board, as we move forward with the BUHS school and the leadership model, I am recommending a reorganization of our current administrative team. And this has been a collaborative process of the team. And each member of the team is committed to this recommendation, or I wouldn't be giving it tonight. And the recommendation would be for next school year that Hannah Parker would assume interim principal role. Cassie would assume her assistant principal role. Tracy will maintain her interim assistant principal role. And Chris Brewer will maintain his interim dean role. And that's how we will move forward with our collaborative leadership team. And I think the future's bright.
Okay. So is there a motion to be made?
I move that this board uphold the recommendation of administration with regard to BUHS administration team.
Is there any discussion? Okay.
I just want to say, hang on, typing, and then I have something to say. I just want to say I really appreciate the really thoughtful work of Mark and all of the 4 administrators on this team to figure out a plan that would be a positive one for next year and have something that everyone feels good about. So really appreciate your work on that.
Thank you.
I'd just like to second what Robin just said.
I think we probably all would like
Yeah.
to second, third, fourth, that's, I think we all appreciate the hard work that all of you have and will have coming to you.
Thank you.
So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
And then before we go into our next.
Let's just get out that.
Is that possible?
I'm sorry?
Would you mind stating the positions again?
Hannah Parker, interim principal. Cassie, assistant principal. Tracy Lane, interim assistant principal. And Chris Brewer, interim dean of students.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say something before we go into our last executive session, and I want to apologize to everyone because I meant to add this at the very beginning of the meeting and say it when everyone was still here. So I hope that we will still be able to vote on this motion. But I wanted to say something to appreciate all of our staff, administrators, and teachers because it's Teacher Appreciation Week. And I have a statement that I would like the board to vote in approval of. Is that okay?
I'm not sure that, can we?
Could we defer that to the next meeting?
When we have a full house.
All right.
Because we want as many people as possible to hear your statement, I think.
Well, I'm just gonna read the statement and then we can vote on it at the future meeting. Is that okay?
Sure.
Although, can I just interject that one option would be to act on it now in order to put it out as an official statement on social media in this week, and then reiterate and acknowledge that action. I do think there's something important about this particular week, and there's activity that there's a spotlight on. So that would be one way to move forward.
So, do we need to have Robin read this out? We've all read it. Can we?
I would like to read it, and then if people feel like we want to not vote about this today, I can read it again at the next meeting. But I do want to read it, and I'm going to put it in the minutes that I read this. Okay? So, this week is National Teacher Appreciation Week. Our appreciation for teachers continues all year long, but we are glad for this opportunity to express it. We want to acknowledge the unflagging resolve of every teacher, staff member, custodian, and administrator in ensuring the welfare of every child during every school day and every extracurricular activity. Our teachers and staff are the foundation of our schools. Their dedication and commitment to every student in these 10 schools is a tremendous gift to our entire district community. We are continually awed and impressed by the deep learning that our teachers and staff are facilitating in this district. They are not only amazing educators, but also innovators, researchers, nurturers, creative problem solvers, collaborators, empowerers, and lifelong learners. We are so thankful for the work, skill, and brilliance of our teachers, administrators, and staff. We are deeply grateful to each and every person who works in our district schools. It is an honor and a privilege to support your work. Sorry, but I didn't say in front of everyone. Would folks feel comfortable approving this today, or would we prefer to have this be a motion at a future meeting?
This is not actually an action. This is a statement. I think we can vote on the statement.
Okay. And if we have to vote on it again next
Yeah, we
time?
could vote
Okay,
again
so
on it next time.
Is there a motion for the board to approve this statement
So
as
moved.
read? Thank you, Kim. All those in favor of approving the statement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
And if folks are okay with this, Mark, I can send you the text of this to send out to all teachers and staff.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Okay.
And once that happens by email, we can share by social media. And you can.
Mix it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm actually going to the last executive session on the grievance, other than tax grievances, labor relations agreement. I'm gonna delay that because we have one more, and then that would be another, and this is.
It's already 9:30.
I think it's.
Yeah.
I think it's.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So, let's do this very quickly. This last one, is there a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage? Please note a separate motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1E pending a probable, no. No, 1 VSA 313A1F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the purposes of providing professional legal services to the body and inviting in Attorney Kendall Host. Is there a motion for that finding?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the,
Wait, we didn't vote on the finding.
I'm jumping ahead, thank you. Okay, I haven't done a second all night, but, okay. So all those in favor of that, making that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. Now, is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 VSA 313A1F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing legal services to the body, professional legal services to the body, and inviting Attorney Kendall Host into the executive session?
So moved. I've made one all night.
I'm going to give it to you.
1 for 10.
Okay. All those in favor of going into executive session as indicated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very
And
much.
will there be any action?
No, there will be no action.